Nation, what's going on? It's Mitchell Renz here, host of the Raiders Report at NFL Media Row here at the Scouting Combine. I got some important Raiders news and some NFL rumors that I wanted to discuss here on today's show. I'm not able to sit at the Chat Sports spot because we're doing a few interviews, and I'm actually getting a Raiders tattoo today, so I had to make sure that I got off to a corner. But there was a lot of things that ended up happening today, a lot of people that I spoke to, and I'll kind of go through what I would say the big news is for the Silver and Black as it stands right now, day 2 of NFL Media Row. If you guys don't already know, though, and hopefully you guys can hear me fine, I'm not hooting and hollering like I normally am, make sure you hit that subscribe button for exclusive content all week long. We talked to players today. We talked to coaches. I even met somebody from the Raiders coaching staff. Mike McCoy ended up meeting today, which was pretty freaking crazy. It's unbelievably humbling to be down here. But the important Raiders news that fans need to know today is Clint Kubiak. He did not speak here in the building at the Combine. Where he actually ended up speaking was off, I believe it was at a hotel with local media members only. I tried to get in. Unfortunately, I was unable to get in. I'm not local media. But Clint Kubiak did say that the Raiders are going to be running a 3-4 defense. And the reason why that I think that that's very notable is because obviously new defensive coordinator Rob Leonard, he's got a lot of interesting ties. And one of the ties that he has is Mike Macdonald. I actually spoke to Mike Macdonald at here at the Combine, and I asked him, what type of tips he'd have for Clint Kubiak. He spoke very highly of Rob Leonard. If you want to go check out that video, it's on my social media, at Mitchell Renz 365. But, with the 3-4 defense, I think Rob's kind of leaning into some of his, past priorities, some of his past coaching trees. Mike Macdonald came from that 3-4 with Baltimore. Now they kind of run a little bit more of a 4-3. They mix it up really well in Seattle, and it's kind of one of the things that Mike Macdonald said, which was play the defense that fits the skill position players that you have the best, and I'm hoping that that's what the Raiders decide to do. But when you see the fact that this team's going to a 3-4, that puts a bigger emphasis on defensive linemen, puts a bigger emphasis especially at the linebacker position, because Devin White, Landon Roberts, Jamal Adams are all going to be free agents, and we got a lot of unknown commodities, if you will, at that certain position. But running a 3-4 with Rob Leonard, I think also kind of ties into some of his roots back in the Brian Flores days. And, Flores runs this very high-paced, pedal-to-the-metal style of defense right now with the Minnesota Vikings. He ran the same thing in Miami, and it really utilizes having players be able to stand up, be good outside linebackers, be good edge rushers, and do a lot of different things. I'm going to tell you all this right now. I think a 3-4 defense could also open things up for a guy like Tyree Wilson. Is he going to be able to play on that outside a little bit more? I know he wants to play 3-tech, which makes it difficult, but still at the same time, Tonka Hemingway, J.J. Pegues, the moment that I saw and I found out that the Raiders are running a 3-4 defense, I thought to myself, that's interesting, because we haven't really heard here at the Combine too much about any of the defensive tackles, meeting with the Silver and Black. Though there is one player, and I'll talk about him here in just a little bit. Another thing that was said by Kubiak was that JPJ can play any role on that offensive line. I asked John Spytek on, would have been, Tuesday? My days are blending together yesterday. Where he thought JPJ was going to be able to play on the offensive line. He kind of gave me, a very similar answer to what Kubiak ended up giving. And essentially it was like, hey, man, we're going to put the 5 best players out there on that field, but that means your GM and your head coach have not said that JPJ is going to play center, that essentially they want to be able to keep that door open because of how good of an offensive lineman Jackson Powers-Johnson is. Let's go to the next one. Kubiak also said that he's going to be looking for a fullback, and sometimes I think when people hear fullback, we just think of the traditional power eye, and he's just going to, be the blocker. I think in today's day and age, if I'm looking for a great fullback to be able to put in a Kubiak offense, I almost look at a dude like a Kyle Juszczyk, somebody that can be a good blocker, can also be kind of used as a tight end from time to time, but can also be used as a reliable pass catcher. And if you're the Raiders, that's somebody that I do think is very important. Maybe you're looking at Nowakowski, the tight end from Indiana. That could be a very intriguing option if you're looking for a fullback tight end hybrid, somebody that's got some connections with Fernando Mendoza from Indiana. Hell, I just did a freaking mock draft the other day, and I took the fullback from Navy, Heidenberg, I think is how you pronounce his name. But that was a prospect that, Tom Downey was like, dude, you should check out this guy. He's a hell of a pass catcher. He plays fullback, good teammate coming from Navy, but I believe it's Hayden. It's like Heidenberg or something like that. Eli Heidenreich. Eli Heidenreich. Big time fan of him. He was actually, again, in my last mock draft that I ended up doing. But the fact that the Raiders are going to be looking for a fullback, I think, again, it just shows that the style of offense that Clint Kubiak is going to be running here with a rookie quarterback in Fernando Mendoza, and it's really going to be the best job to open up, I think, some 13 personnel, some 12 personnel. I want to see 3 tight ends. I want to see the 2 tight end sets, obviously, and then you're going to incorporate, a lot of that ground game with Ashton Genty. Let's now go to the next big thing that I wanted to talk about today, and again, being here at the Combine, it's completely different than what I actually thought it was going to be like. You're trying to be able to meet with all these players. You're trying to be able to sit down and talk to these guys, but yet there's so much going on around you. And while I was at one of the other podiums getting some clips for some of our other guys here at Chat Sports, I missed the Texas Tech defensive tackle Lee Hunter. And Lee Hunter actually said that he has a top 30 visit with the Las Vegas Raiders. I do think it's important to mention, just because the Raiders meet with a player doesn't mean that they're going to draft that guy. Now, sometimes it can be important. Like last season, I was the very first person to break that the Raiders ended up meeting with Caleb Rodgers and that they were going to have a top 30 visit with him. Obviously they went out, they drafted him. But to me, with the fact that the Raiders are going to be going with a 3-4 defense, and that news came out today, I do find it very interesting that the Raiders ended up meeting with Texas Tech defensive tackle Lee Hunter, who is projected to be I would say, late round 1, early round 2 guy. And if you're the silver and black, you got that round 2 pick 36 pick, and you're kind of sitting there, and it makes me wonder, could that be somebody that's on the Raiders board? Because I do think if you were to ask most Raiders fans out there, hey, if you're going to take Fernando Mendoza number 1 overall, what does that mean that you're going to do in round 2, pick 36? And I think a lot of people would say, we got to go defense. And me personally, I would agree with that. I would 100% like to be able to go defense here. So here's what Lance Zierlein, who I actually met Lance Zierlein today, had to say on Lee Hunter and what he brings to the table from an NFL prospect standpoint. Hunter is a 2-gapping nose tackle for odd or even fronts. He has the size, strength, and the length to do battle in the heart of the trenches, but requires better block take-on technique to sit in the grass. He won't win in the gaps, but he can stack up, shed single blocks, or slide and to stabilize his run fit against zone blocks. Hunter's girth and length, giggity, are advantages while lining over the center as a run defender. He doesn't have enough quickness or skill as a rusher to see many passing downs, but he can dent the pocket with his power. Hunter projects as an early down space eater who can make interior offensive linemen work for their gaps. So when you look at his numbers over the past 3 seasons, he's got over 500 snaps played with the Texas Tech Red Raiders, and that defense was one of the biggest reasons why that team was successful. And I know Lee Hunter is a player that I did actually mention many, many months ago on this channel, because at the end of the day, I want somebody who's a big-bodied boy. And at 6'4", 330, 335 pounds, to me, that's the type of defensive tackle that the Las Vegas Raiders do truly, truly need. And if you're able to put somebody there on the interior, eat up some space, that way you're able to free up a Max Crosby, an edge rusher that we potentially bring in, or even some of these linebackers. Because if you're going to play a 3-4, you better have somebody over the nose, over the center, that can generate pressure. And I'm hoping that the Raiders are able to do that. So I'm going to hit y'all with a question here. And the question is essentially going to be around, round 2, pick number 36 here. What position do you want the Raiders to go with in that spot? Fernando Mendoza is the expected number 1 overall pick, and I don't think that that's really going to change much in my mind here. But I want to know from you down below, what position do you want the Raiders to address at round 2, pick 36 in the NFL draft? Whether it's defensive tackle, whether it's edge, I do really think it's important for the Raiders to learn how to win in the trenches. Now, if you're telling me they don't go edge and they don't go defensive tackle, well, now knowing that we're going to be running the 3-4, I do think adding a linebacker, maybe like a C.J. Allen, who's considered a fantastic leader coming out of Georgia, another guy that I had in my mock draft, finding players that have success on the outside and having linebackers also. To me, if we're running the 3-4, linebacker is going to be a major, major position that the silver and black invest in. And, I'm not going to lie to you. It makes me wonder, could we go out and try to get a guy like Devin Lloyd? Could we go out and maybe try to get some cheaper linebackers and then go out and get a big guy here or there in the second round. So next thing that I'm going to talk about on the program today is going to be Max Crosby. I actually had the opportunity to talk to Diana Rossini, and who knows, we might even get her as a future guest here on this program. But I'm going to talk to you guys about Max Crosby. I'm also going to talk to you about some other big-time news that's kind of been going down here at the Combine around a certain quarterback, and then some big trade rumors revolving the Chicago Bears. So we'll talk about all that here in just a moment, but before I get into that, huge shout-out to today's sponsor, Prize Picks. Reminder, Prize Picks is America's #1 fantasy sports app out there, and even though football season is over, don't be afraid to shoot your shot and get $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. That's right, Prize Picks is now giving you $50 in lineups to play to get that first $5. Prize Picks makes every dunk, every dime, every board that much more exciting. So don't miss the chance to get started in America's #1 app for sports picks. You can find your community on Prize Picks. Hell, you can find me at Mitchell Renz 365. But on Prize Picks, how you play, it's totally up to you. And if you want flexibility, choose a flex play where you can get paid even if one of your picks misses. And if you want some of the bigger payouts like my guy Weldonator, that's where you go with the power play. Prize Picks is simple to play. If my dad can do it, I promise y'all can do it as well. You just pick 2 to 6 players, and if you get your picks right, you can cash in. The fact that it is available in all 50 states, there's no more excuses out there. So join millions of users. Sign up for America's #1 fantasy sports app out there. Download the Prize Picks app today. Make sure that you use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. So let's talk about Max Crosby, because today I heard Diana Rossini on Part of My Take really discussing a lot of those trade rumors, and essentially, she's still banging on the drum of Max Crosby she believes is going to be traded this offseason. So I remember all the Super Bowl talk, and I remember, Jay Glazer, Diana Rossini, same thing, a lot of conversation about Max is going to get traded. So when I went up to Diana today, and I asked her essentially like, hey, Diana, I'm Mitchell Renz, introduced her, who the Raiders Report is, who Chat Sports is. And I said, what's the latest on Max? I heard you today on Part of My Take, and you sounded pretty confident that Max was going to get dealt. And when I asked her that question, it was essentially like nothing has changed from now until, or since the Super Bowl, when she mentioned it before. And, I think a lot of Raiders fans, we know that the national media is talking about Max Crosby trades, and I even said it to her. I go, everybody that I talk to inside the Raiders camp is telling me Max wants to stay a Raider. Max, I think has not really said that he wants to be a Raider, but he also, I don't think has said that he doesn't want to be, right? Dude's still wearing Raiders gear. Guy's still in the building every day. Clint Kubiak has spoke about that he wants Max to be here. John Spytek, has said that he wants Max to be a part of this conversation. So I essentially asked her, I was like, why is the NFL media pushing so hard that Max is going to be dealt, and why are you so confident that he's going to be dealt? And, today she was just like, well, from what I understand, Max's team is here at the NFL Combine, and they're talking to people. I don't know who from Max's team is here. I reached out to people who I usually talk to, and, I haven't really heard anything from anyone that I personally talk to. Not saying that it's not true, but what I understood was, Diana Rossini was essentially saying that she still believes that Max Crosby is ultimately dealt. In terms of new information on that, didn't sound like she had any information. It was more of a gut feeling, and I just think that a lot of people here from the NFL media are pushing this gut feeling that Max Crosby wants to be traded because it's what they have heard from people that they're talking to. And I'm telling you, from the Super Bowl and from being at the Combine, if you cover the Las Vegas Raiders, it's very much like, I don't know if Max is going to get dealt, and I don't think he's going to get dealt. If you talk to anybody from the NFL media, it's like, oh, yeah, I think Max Crosby is going to get dealt. So I want to be able to share that little interaction that I had with Diana, and, if Diana ever wants to pull up here on the Raiders Report, Diana, I would be more than happy to be able to get you up here on this program. We talk about your reports a lot. It would be cool to be able to get you finally on some Chat Sports program. But you got my business card, so let's get it popping. All right, let's go to the next story here, and I think it's one of the biggest stories that I heard today. I've talked to a few NFL insiders. There's been some coaches that have been kind of popping around, walking around here, and I think the top story today that's not Raiders related, well, this morning at least, was that Malik Willis, and there's a lot of Malik Willis talk, right? What's funny is, there's so many people that are like, oh, the Raiders shouldn't draft Fernando Mendoza. That's fine. You can say that all you want. I don't think it's a good plan at all. I'm taking Mendoza no matter what. At this point, I don't care what the Jets offer me. I want Fernando Mendoza to be my franchise quarterback. But on the same breath, if you were to pass on Fernando Mendoza, what does that mean? who's the quarterback that you're going to be able to bring in, because when the reports are that Malik Willis is in demand, and I like Malik Willis, but according to reports, there's belief from Jordan Schultz that he's going to get $30 million per year. And it's like $30 million is like it sounds like that's basically going to happen. And I know the contract that I floated out before on the show is the Justin Fields deal. And I could see Malik Willis getting a deal very similar to that. It's like a 2-year, $40 million, but $30 million is guaranteed. So essentially it's like a 1-year prove-it deal. If Malik Willis ends up getting that deal, and if you're the Raiders and you don't plan on drafting Fernando Mendoza, you're going to spend a shit ton of money on another quarterback that's like, I think, going to be a Gardner Minshew situation, a Geno Smith situation, a Jimmy Garoppolo situation where, we're sitting here going, we're still looking for a franchise quarterback. And if this was a, offseason stacked with tons of talented free agent quarterbacks and maybe some guys on the open market, then sure, like that might be a different conversation. But this is not the case. There's not a lot of quarterbacks in the draft, not a lot of quarterbacks in free agency, not a lot of quarterbacks on the open market. So to me, like hearing the reports of Malik Willis is going to get $30 million per year, I think it just is even more important that the Raiders need to make sure that they get Mendoza. Now, I know that there was some clips yesterday, and I want to make it clear, like, I heard John Spytek talk. I asked Spytek plenty of questions. I talked to, people that were talking to Spytek even after his press conference. I don't have the gut feeling that they don't want Fernando Mendoza to not play year one. I think what Spytek essentially was trying to say yesterday was like, all things are on the table, and all things should be on the table at this point, right? Like, Kubiak the other day not committing to draft Mendoza is the same thing as, John Spytek, in my opinion, yesterday saying like, well, like, there's a chance that we don't start a rookie right away, or like we don't like it. But you shouldn't like putting a rookie quarterback out there to the Wolves if you don't have all the right pieces around. So I think also what Spytek is trying to say, like, we're not just going to throw a guy out there because we're drafting him number 1 overall. We're going to try to put him in the best situation to succeed. Maybe that's an offensive line. Maybe that's some extra pieces around him. Maybe it's a fullback, right? But they're going to try to put him in the best situation. And if they feel like he's in the best situation, then Fernando Mendoza will be the starter. But a lot of quarterback talks, though, around the veterans because of that report that came out yesterday. And I'll just say this. To me, I think if you're the Raiders, you could look at a Case Keenum. I know that he's 38 years old, but that's what the Raiders need to me. I need a quarterback 3 that knows he's a quarterback 3, that's worked in a Clint Kubiak system before, that allows Aiden O'Connell to be your quarterback 2, and then allows both of those guys to get the best version of Fernando Mendoza and get him, ramped up and get him ready to go. Another name I'm going to throw out there, it's a cheap vet, and when I say vet, he's just been in the league for a few years, is Brett Rippon. And Brett Rippon has got some overlap with Kubiak from their 2022 season in Denver. And again, I just need a quarterback 3 that understands the system. Like, to me, if we're going to sign a veteran, if we're going to sign a quarterback, that's the style of quarterback that I think that the Raiders need to go out and try to get. Other options, like some big name guys, like you could look at an Aaron Rodgers. But if Malik Willis is getting $30 million a year, I think Aaron Rodgers is going to get $30 million a year. Are you going to sign Aaron Rodgers to a 1-year, $30 million deal? I know Max Crosby is a fan of him, and I know Rodgers can still get it done, but, like, that's an option. You could look at Kirk Cousins. Like, Kirk Cousins obviously had a really solid season, over 100 passer rating with Clint Kubiak in 2021 with the Minnesota Vikings. And, Kubiak was a part of that regime 2019, 2020 as well. So he's got a lot of ties, but it's been pretty well documented that Kirk Cousins doesn't want to mold a young quarterback. He was not happy about the Michael Penix situation. That was very, very well documented. I mean, I think that's one of the biggest reasons why Atlanta is ultimately going to be moving on from him this offseason. So if Cousins was upset that they drafted a quarterback at 8, how the hell do you think he's going to feel if the Raiders draft a quarterback at number 1? Like, I understand that Cousins probably has to realize he doesn't have many, many years left underneath his belt, but signing Kirk Cousins, I literally feel is just like another Jimmy Garoppolo, another Geno Smith, another Gardner Minshew. It's another Band-Aid. And if the reason is, well, hey, we want Mendoza to learn for 1 year, okay. I don't agree with it, but okay. Because that means then you're spending $30 million, $40 million potentially, let's say it's even just 20 to 25 on a quarterback that's not going to be here very long. I personally would rather invest that extra 20, 25 million and go out and spend some extra pieces on the offensive line, build a better defense, and allow Mendoza to get the work in, because I think he's ready to start. I think he's got it up here, and I think if you're doubting him, then you haven't watched a lot of Fernando Mendoza over the past, 3, 6, 5. Other names that I'm going to throw out there, because I know I'm going to get these names. Derek Carr is going to be a name that comes up on this show. Again, if Carr wants to start for 1 year, from like a content standpoint, nothing would make me happier because I know fans are going to watch Derek Carr. I know people would be really fired up about DC, but at the same time, like, Derek's got to understand his role. And if his role is to just be the quarterback for 1 year and then you hand the keys over to Fernando Mendoza, like, that's, I guess, a job. I know he's got a good connection with Kubiak, got a good connection with the Raiders OC, Andrew Janocko, from their times together in New Orleans. But at the same time, again, like, I'm Team Fernando Mendoza. The last name I'm going to throw out there is Joe Flacco. And I do think Joe Flacco is another veteran name. I've actually heard a few people comp Fernando Mendoza to Flacco in terms of just, like, his ability when he was first coming out of Delaware. Now, I think Mendoza is a better prospect, and I don't even think it's close to me when they're first coming out. But Joe Flacco could at least be another name of a veteran that maybe the Raiders decide to bring in. The last thing that I want to talk about, though, real quick here, on today's show, and again, I apologize for speaking so lightly. I had a few people yesterday who were like, bro, why are you talking so light? But you can't really hoot and holler here at the Combine. I've noticed, like, people don't really like that, so I've had to really try to talk in my normal voice. I know sometimes people think that I talk funny because of the headset, but the headset is on there, and I'm a hollerer when I talk. I actually don't know how to talk this quiet. It's very different to me. I'm not used to doing it, quite frankly. The other thing, though, that I want to be able to talk about, this is news from Brad Briggs, that the Bears have granted permission for linebacker Tremaine Edmunds to seek a trade. According to a league source, he's under contract for the 2026 season at $15 million. Still young, was a Pro Bowl caliber player through the first 10 games before a minor injury. He finished the year healthy, led the D in tackles. If you're the Raiders and you're running a 3-4 defense, you know, I just go back and I think of what Jeremy Fowler told me yesterday. He said without hesitation, the number one team to trade for Max Crosby, the Chicago Bears, without hesitation. So I do wonder, like, could the Raiders potentially, like, put together a trade package with Chicago that features a Tremaine Edmunds, maybe throw in a DJ Moore, and then you're looking at a first-round pick and then probably, I don't know, maybe like a third-round pick on top of that. But the 2 first-round picks and a player on top, I just don't know if it's going to happen for the Raiders and for Max Crosby. Then is, again, if they end up trading Max. But timing is everything in the NFL, and for Fowler to say without a blink that he thought the Bears were the number one team to make a deal, and now you're seeing a linebacker, Tremaine Edmunds. Raiders have a clear linebacker need. I don't know, just I thought it was kind of interesting, and I figured I'd put it in there. All right, before I get on out of here, again, some of the people that I met today at the Combine, Diana Rossini, huge shout out to her. Mike McCoy, when we were walking in this morning, I mean, it was probably like 7:30 in the morning. We were getting here to the Combine, and I'm looking at this guy, and I'm like, dude, I think that's Mike McCoy. And he's got a Raider sweater on, and I walked up to him, and I was like, hey, Mike, you know, I'm Mitch. Like, very nice to meet you. Like, let's go Raiders. Excited to be able to have you. And obviously, I mean, he had no idea who the hell I was. But, you know, he was like, I think I'm very appreciative that somebody came up to him. And at the end of the day, I was like, hey, man, like, let's get some wins going here for Raider Nation. And he was like, yeah, man, you know, gave me like a good old fist pump. But, again, like, he's not going to remember it. I know he won't remember it. But I think that's what's so cool about being here at the Combine. Some other person that I actually met Marcus Johnson. I know he does some content around the Raiders. Super, super nice guy. I was able to talk to him. Obviously, I've been seeing Vinny. Q's been around here a bunch. I saw Levi Edwards today. I haven't really seen anybody else for the Raiders in this entire area. But, you know, I'm hoping to see some more people. And if you're a Raiders content creator and you're going to be out here at the Combine, you know, don't be afraid to come up to me. Don't be afraid to say hello. I'm a normal dude just like all y'all, just at the end of the day trying to put food on a table and a roof over my head talking about the Las Vegas Raiders. So hopefully y'all appreciated this video. I thought there was a lot of, you know, good Raiders news that ended up happening today. Some other NFL stuff, but also it's going to be the Max Crosby trade rumors show, and anytime I can get the scoop, anytime I get some extra information on it, I'm always going to do my best to keep you guys up to date. Reminder, hit that subscribe button right here. I'm telling you, we got more videos. I actually plan on dropping another video a little bit later on today. I got to try to get out of here, though, in the next 2 hours. If you want to click this button here, you can check out more videos and then even more videos over here on the Raiders Report YouTube channel. At the end of the day, if you bleed silver and black, you're going to be a fan of this channel.